All right, this is going to be pretty much the meat of my presentation, because I think with the AirCheck having been out for a while, this is a place where I think a lot of people kind of get interested. So my name is Hinsz. I'm Product Line Manager here with NETSCOUT. I want to go over some tips and tricks for using the AirCheck G2 that may not be immediately obvious when you first fire on the device. So one of them is pretty straightforward, but it's taking a screenshot. And I bump into people all the time that don't realize, you know what, you can actually take a screenshot on your AirCheck. And it's pretty simple. I know it's not exactly advertised very heavily, but if you just push and hold on the little question mark help symbol, eventually it's going to beep. You'll see a little camera icon flash up on the screen, and you will have a screenshot. And if you want to then go pull that screenshot off, you can hook it up to your AirCheck Manager software, and you can go ahead and pull that off. There's actually a screen in the unit config in AirCheck Manager that says, save your screenshots. If you don't have access to AirCheck Manager immediately, you can also transfer those to a USB flash drive using the file management that's built into the AirCheck. But either way, if you're in a situation and, maybe even to your point, Sam, and you say, hey, I'm seeing this with the AirCheck. I know you're saying the infrastructure says that. Let me take a quick screen cap so you can see what I'm seeing. This is a great way to do that. And it's a nice way to kind of prove out, no, really, here's what I'm seeing right now for any screen that isn't like a test result that is automatically going to be saved. This is a fun one. We hear feedback every now and again that, yeah, we like the profiles and adding a network to it, but it's a pain in the butt because when I go to my profile and I say add network, then I have to sit there and type in all the SSID and all that information. Well, there's a little bit of a shortcut that you can do. If you know the network that you want, go ahead and find it in the network list. Hit connect. And if it's not already in the profile, the AirCheck's automatically going to bring up the screen you see there with everything it can determine from the beacons, et cetera, already filled in. And then it's going to allow you to put in the rest. So in this case, you can see this was actually an enterprise network, so it's going to let me pick what certificate I want to use. If this was a PSK network, it would have a spot there saying, hey, what's the pre-share key? Go ahead and boom, hit that, type it in, and you're off and running. Much quicker, much easier way to get it in there than having to go in and configure each of these drop-downs manually yourself. This kind of plays into some of the other questions. I talk about profiles a lot. And part of the reason I do that is because they're such a powerful way to get the most out of your AirCheck. So one of the things you can actually do is really set up a lot of the 802.11 settings the way you want them and save those to a profile. So for example, if I don't want to see inaudible APs at all, I could turn the gray out to remove. So now the moment I can't hear something anymore, it's gone. Cleans up my screen a bit. I could turn on SSID filtering, for example. And I could either filter out all my network, maybe that's not what I care about. Maybe I'm trying to just hunt down rogues or other things in the environment. Or maybe I'm only troubleshooting my network, so I don't want the rest of that stuff. Well, I could just filter it on my SSIDs. And now that's going to be what I see. I can actually set up what the signal level I want to filter on is. So maybe I want both. But look, if it's below like -85, don't tell me about it. That's probably the Starbucks across the street. Don't bother me with it. I can set that level as well. And then sort of for bonus points here, you can save a couple different variants to different profiles. So then you load the profile of what you want to do at that moment. Boom, you got it configured that way. Do what you need to do. But then if you've got that quote unquote rogue finder profile, the one where you've lopped out all your SSIDs and everything, say, below a certain threshold, so it's really the strong stuff and not mine, well, I'll switch over to that profile. Fire that up and look around. Do I see anything that looks like it might be a rogue? So again, really powerful way to use profiles to get the most out of what you want to do. But I mentioned certificates. I get asked about certificates a lot. Probably because just in general, AirCheck aside, certificates are a bit of a pain. And almost every IT group that I bump into is looking for a better way to manage their certificates. For getting certificates loaded onto an AirCheck, I want to actually walk people through this a little bit because we get a lot of questions. It's not that big of a deal, particularly if you use AirCheck Manager. So you're going to go ahead and go into your profile management and pick any profile that you want to add something to. From there, when you're in the Create Profile or Edit Profile dialog, there is an option for certificates. And I can add as many or as few certificates as I want, and then those will all be up in AirCheck Manager. Once I've done that, all I need to do is sync this new profile up with my AirCheck. And now, remember that screen earlier I showed I didn't have any certificates loaded on the device, so when I was trying to attach to an enterprise network, it kind of said, don't know what you're trying to do here, Chris, there's no certificates. Now, I try to connect to a network, and it says, okay, well, you've got certificates, pull down the drop-down, here's the ones you've got loaded up on here, you tell me which one I'm supposed to use for this network, I'll go ahead and use it.
So, I think everybody in the room is a huge fan of the AirCheck, and I think as you look around the room, you see that there's one PC on the table. AirCheck Manager for Windows is a stumbling block for, I think, a lot of folks who really, really love the tool. Any plans for making that a little bit easier?
I think the simplest way for me to answer that is to say I've got slides that are coming up in a little bit around Link Live, because Link Live really is a crown jewel for us. It's where we really believe we add a lot of value beyond anybody else who's giving wireless tools out there. And we continue to look for ways to enhance our profile on Link Live and things that we can do even with all of our devices, including AirCheck, to enable Link Live to be utilized with our products to do that. So
fantastic.
You bring up something like this would all fall into me under the umbrella of profile management. And yeah, we're always talking about, hey, how do we get more stuff up into Link Live? Hey, could we get something like profile management up there? So can I tell you, hey, we've got a release upcoming and that's in it? No, I can't tell you that. Yeah. Can I tell you that that's something that we're actively discussing, how we get more stuff up in Link Live? Yep, most assuredly.
Fantastic.
So I don't have an AirCheck. So the question is probably a user. But if you have multiple profiles, can you from the AirCheck actually change between profiles?
Yeah. Okay. So I go in there. We call it loading a profile just for whatever reason. But yeah, I can go in there, manage my profile, say load this profile. Boom, I'm now switched into that context. I can have several profiles on that device and just load. And if I make a change on the device, like talking about adding that network. So to Sam's point, hey, I don't really want to fire up a PC. I don't really want to deal with that. Yeah, you could be adding networks that way. You just made changes to that profile. Go in there, save profile. Okay. Oh, hey, okay, you want to save this over? Yes, I do. So now you've added those networks that you just added to that particular profile, or create a new one. And if you're at a different site, for example, hey, right now I'm in San Jose, so that's all fine, but I go out to our Colorado Springs office, and maybe it's a whole different context there. I might just save those all to a Colorado Springs one. So I might load up my San Jose, make some alterations, and then save that as Colorado Springs. Okay. Because that's what I want to do. And then from then on, wherever I go, boom, I'm going to load the profile for that particular location. So a lot of flexibility. We see people using it by location, by the test they want to run. But I think from what I've seen, I don't see people leveraging profiles anywhere near as much as they could to get even more out of the tool.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So on the certificate front there, I see you have up to a 4096 cert. My question is around SHA2 support. Okay. I know that was a challenge at one point. Does the product line support SHA2 certs?
So we've been looking at SHA256, and we've still had some difficulties getting them functioning. It's still in active development, and so definitely keep tuned. We are aware of it. It has been brought to our attention, and Dev is actually actively looking at that.
Thank you.
Anything else I can answer on the certificate front? Now, this was a fun one. This one actually didn't come from us. This came from somebody who was chatting to us at a conference and said, what I like to do? I thought, wow, that's actually a pretty clever little idea. And that is to kind of trick your AirCheck into being a port tester. So typically what we have on our connection test is you can pick to ping something like Google, usually the default people choose, to make sure that you can actually get all the way out to the internet and reach things out on the web. But what someone pointed out is, instead of picking a test type of ping, I go ahead and pick TCP port open. I pick the port, or repeat this for several ports, that I believe I'm supposed to have blocked. And then I daisy chain those all up in my profile. And that's part of my connection test. And so when I run my connection test, I'm actually expecting to see fail, 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 because this is my port scanner. It's me making sure that all these ports I believe I have blocked are blocked. And if something comes back green, it's, ooh, what happened? Thought I had that one blocked.
So is there a possibility to, it's a great feature of adding ports, but maybe just one that just scans through the range and it just tells you what comes back, as you can say, I want it open if it comes back open, because...
You mean a legit port scan?
A legit, yeah. If you have the option to port scan, why
That's
not
actually a really interesting idea. It's not something that we do today, but that's certainly something that we could look at. We have, to your point, we have the ability to do this, so asking the device to simply run through a range would not be infeasible. So it's certainly something we can entertain.
It's definitely something that we encounter on a regular basis too, and having all that feature set and then adding that feature too would be excellent. I agree. I never thought about that really either.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'll take that back to the engineering team. So, Link Live. I almost consider Link Live to kind of be almost like profiles. I don't think it's appreciated at quite the level that it can be by people. This room, you're the exception. But in general, I think there's a lot that you can do with Link Live, and we are continually looking for ways to further improve that, because Link Live really gives you a lot of feature functionality. Now, I'm not going to necessarily give you a full spiel trying to convince you about the values of Link Live. I'm a little bit more focused on the AirCheck. But I did want to kind of talk a little bit about some of what Link Live can do to help you sort through and manage all your results. Because you're out there with your AirCheck, you're collecting all this data, and now, in theory, you're squirting it all to Link Live because you created your Link Live account and you've got all these test results up there. And one of the things I hear people talk about is, yeah, but now they're all up there and I don't know how to sort through them. I don't want to. And so it almost becomes this sort of wasteland. They stop using it. But it's really pretty easy. It's important because it really helps with the collaboration. You don't have to worry about always, say, being on the phone with somebody and saying, here's what I saw. I ran that connection test you asked. It did. No. Does it have Link Live connectivity? Yep. Okay, the result's going to be there. Yeah, I see it. So that eliminates the need for that retrospective. Doesn't mean a screenshot's still not nice. But if you actually ran a specific test, that result's up there, the rest of your team can see it immediately.
It would be nice to have the save button and have that entire snapshot of data from the entire spectrum be able to be pushed and just have, an entire snapshot.
Yeah, we call that the session file.
Yeah.
So, that is, when we're talking about things we're looking at with Link Live, session file inclusion is definitely one of them. Because we really want to get more and more information up. And my personal goal, and I don't have a timeline for this, my personal goal is that AirCheck Manager as an application is no longer necessary.
Yeah.
That basically is Link Live. That I can use Link Live for everything. I have the ability actually within Link Live to sort things into folders. But what they've really done that's kind of nice is with a lot of the sorting and the ability to dive in on results, half the time I don't even necessarily need the folders. But let's take a look at some results here. So when I did a connection test, I did it to NS Visitor in this room because I really wanted to make sure everything was going to be great for you guys when you showed up. So after I completed that test, it automatically sent that result up to Link Live because I had connectivity. And as part of that, it sent me a little email confirmation. Hey, your result reached Link Live. Just by replying to that email, whatever I type into that reply automatically becomes a comment in Link Live. So you can see when I drill down on this result, making sure visitors are well served. That was just me doing a reply in Outlook. So as soon as I just typed a reply, whatever I typed in on that reply automatically showed up as a comment. Yes, please.
Just a quick question from Twitter, actually going back just a little bit what you talked about.
Yeah.
Can you do a live screen share of the G2 via the AirCheck Manager rather than take a screenshot? That's from Alan Blake.
Just wait for that.
AirCheck Manager it's a manager platform. So it's really loading and offloading profiles, et cetera. It's not a live connect. People might be familiar with the idea that, for example, our OneTouch product does allow for sort of like a remote access via Link Live into a OneTouch unit. So one might presume that that's one of the laundry list of things that I'm looking at to extend our Link Live capabilities. From an AirCheck Manager perspective, I'm really not looking to make drastic changes to AirCheck Manager. And again, this is just philosophy. This isn't, next release, anything. It's just my philosophy. I don't want to see too much added into AirCheck Manager. I want it all in Link Live. Because I really believe, soup to nuts, this really is where people want to be.
I have a question.
Screen sharing, before we leave off of Alan Blake's screen sharing question, though, I'm sorry. Screen sharing outside of Manager? Right.
We do have the ability, and you may have seen demos on web things before, to use like a little virtual remote screen, but right now that's pretty much a direct connect. So I use my laptop, I can use like VNC to VNC into the unit, and I can do a screen share. So that is possible, but it's not really through AirCheck Manager at all. Right. And right now, that's a pretty localized network type of thing. So if I don't have network connectivity via the wire and my AirCheck plugged into a wire, I'm not really going to get what I need.
But if it was plugged into the wire.
But if it's plugged into a wire, I can do it.
And also in the screenshots, is those looking at getting those up into Link Live too, because it's nice to be able to transfer them, but how about sending them like we're sending data?
Yeah. So, yes.
Okay.
It's kind of easy. These are easy in a sense for me because our goal is if AirCheck Manager does it or has a facility to do something, our goal is to get that up into Link Live. And it's just, people kind of know this portal. We've been flushing it out over the last couple of years.
Including upgrading firmware? Upgrading firmware as well?
That's on the list as well. People may be familiar with the fact that like Link Runner can do that. So we're looking at doing that with the AirCheck as well. So, people may have noticed this is the new and improved look and feel for Link Live that I'm showing. So if anybody either on the stream or in the room is going, oh, it used to look a little different than that, that's because this is the new and improved UI. And as we're continuing to build this out, we are putting a lot of time and effort into making this the premier tool for leveraging all of the NETSCOUT tools.
Great, when?
So today you can in Link Live
Soon.
today in Link Live you can switch between old UI and new UI. Is that eventually going to be just new UI?
Yes. That will not be indefinite, as you might have imagined. Our adoption curves, hopefully Lisa won't strangle me for telling you this, but so I've seen some of the adoption curves and we're really starting to see that shift where more and more people seem to be preferring and using the new. So I don't know when the cutoff date is, but I would imagine that it's not that far away because it really does seem like more and more people are opting into the new anyway and preferring to use it.
So the AirCheck will send data, its data to Link Live. Will it be able to add some sort of comment to, like if I have a field tech going out somewhere to check a connection, I want to make sure he tested a specific location. Mm-hmm. I was at this row or seat.
Yep.
Example.
So a couple things that you can do for that. Today, comment adding would be done via replying to the email. But an interesting thing about that you can actually do. So let's say, I don't have my phone on me because I didn't want it ringing during the presentation. Usually I'd wave the phone around as an example. Let's say the guy was supposed to go to a particular location, so he goes out there and he runs some tests and he looks up and he goes, well, that's not right. And he sees something that should be, posted, taken a picture and posted to the BadFi site. And so he goes, okay, pushes his test result up, takes a picture, say, with his phone. When he replies to that automatically generated email, if he attaches that picture, that will actually go up. So any attachments that he puts onto a result via the email mechanism will go in there. So he could put a comment, yeah, went to Billy Joe's Cube, definitely saw problems. Take a look at this. Dink.
And it shows up in the link.
And that will show up.
Click on it and you see.
And so I didn't take a picture. I didn't attach a picture here because I was being lazy.
What files?
But you would have actually seen that a reference here that there was an attachment. And at the bottom of the record, you would have seen any attachments that had been made onto that record.
File size limitations, or will it downscale an image to a particular resolution?
That's a good question, one I actually don't know the answer to.
Fantastic.
Have you guys looked at doing more alert types, so as opposed to just email? You could send it to a if then this else, or you could send a JSON request out so that we can maybe do more integrations into other systems as well.
I know that the Link Live team has had requests for integrating Link Live into stuff. Maybe it is you.
Teams and I have
Because, as you might imagine, my Link Live focus is kind of tunnel visioned on AirCheck. I honestly don't know what they are or are not doing. What I will say is, again, given that we're pretty bullish on Link Live as a solution platform and really a differentiator for us across our portfolio, I would imagine we're taking those pretty seriously.
Yeah, I mean,
But I honestly don't know.
with all the vendors having, or I should say not all, but most of the vendors now having more and more API because of the buzzword that we've all been hearing about, the analytics stuff on it, it'd be nice to be able to say is that if I did this check from the AirCheck, and I did an auto test, or I did XYZ parameter testing, and it has a BSSID associated to it, if I can send that data over to a custom server that can then also query into my Airwave, my Prime, or whatever I have, and do some correlations. Now I have a client-side device RSSI level, and I can go and query and hopefully try to get the stats from the controller as well as to how it saw the AirCheck, so I have both sides of the picture now.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's fairly compelling to me. Unfortunately, I'm not the product line manager for Link Live as a system, so I honestly just don't know where that stands.
But your product line that you got.
I can certainly make noise about it. That's for sure, and I can definitely see the utility of it. You can see the move to folder option right here. So you can collect results into folders, and that can be useful for a couple different ways. Obviously, just sort of cleaning up your mess of arranging things, but also you actually have the ability to generate reports based upon a folder. So if you have, say, a series of results over time in a particular location, and you kind of wanted to report on all of those, easy way is to put them in a folder and then run that report against that folder. So you can actually aggregate really nicely that way.
Can you export that data? I don't know if I might have missed that. Like export data from Link Live into some sort of CSV format?
Effectively, that would be kind of like using the reporting function. So yeah, when you generate the report, it's going to ask if you want PDF or if you want it more CSV oriented. Another thing that's kind of cool, especially with the new Link Live, and I will freely acknowledge, before I came on board with AirCheck relatively recently, I didn't necessarily know how well this worked. Back to my list of all the results. So let's say I said, boy, this isn't good, because you notice I have that red bar there, because when I ran the test, I manufactured a gateway fail. Huh, that's not good. What else has ever happened on NS Visitor? If I just click on that SSID, it's automatically going to enter that filter. And now it's going to filter my results across everything in the current folder I'm sitting in for that particular result. And I can click on pretty much anything I want, and it will keep adding filters. And that's a really nice way, even if you don't want to go through the bother of putting folders, because not that that's really tough, but so you just don't want to bother. This is actually just a really nice way to just filter in whatever you need to do. What am I looking for? Well, I'm looking for this. Fine. Filter on in on it. See all the results that match that particular criteria. And with that, this actually extends across all devices. So obviously something like SSID, well, that's pretty specific to our wireless stuff. But if I had a port, even better. Let's say I'm Keith, and I know how Keith loves using like link sprinters as a way of validating the deployment went well, and let's say I convinced all those guys to always put the port number in their comment when they were validating stuff. And let's say it's quite a while later, and maybe a couple times people have been out there with link runners, and maybe they've done some AirCheck stuff as well, and they put APs on there. If I did a search across everything for a port number, because I can also filter across those comments, I can catch all those results. So I could see everything potentially from that first time that somebody actually installed it, through maybe any other time someone was out there with a link runner checking that port, plus anytime maybe somebody did something with an AirCheck and had a reason to jack in and do an Ethernet test because something was screwy, and said, oh, well, I sanity checked that port. So I'll catch it across all those devices, as long as someone put that in the comment, hey, I was checking, port blah, 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 find them all.
Question from Twitter again. They want to know if there is any hope for using it as a data collector for multiple sites / walking surveys.
I'm presuming we're back to the AirCheck and not Link Live.
Yes.
I think there's a lot of good around the AirCheck. This is not the first time someone's asked about conducting rudimentary surveys with it. My personal take is our biggest limitation is likely just the tap screen interface being relatively small. That doesn't mean no, it doesn't mean impossible, but it does mean that we really need to approach it carefully and make sure we did a good job. Because otherwise I could see it being incredibly frustrating as you're trying to say where you're walking and where I'm collecting data. And I don't know if you're like me, that's a pretty wide landing spot. And if I'm trying to actually do this viably, I would probably end up chucking my AirCheck against the wall at some point. But that's not the first time we've heard it. And so, it is in the back of our mind as something that we might look to support. But, we have a lot of stuff. You guys have already had some good comments, and I've told you some things that are obviously on our plate. So, where it falls in that, we'll have to see.
Thank you. One more note on Link Live. One of the things I've noticed is in certain environments that I work in, Link Live is often not a site that, or the upload of the data rather, lots of times doesn't make it through the proxy. So later on I end up going and plugging it in and then getting all my reports, which is fine. Mm-hmm. But for a lot of proxies, IronPort's a great example. If you're not connecting on 443 and not connecting on 80, a lot of times it's allowed through. You can actually kind of get around the proxy on a different port because it's not considered web traffic, and so it's not filtering that traffic. So something that the Link Live team may want to try is in the attempt to do the upload as part of the test, if they can't get out on 443, I'm assuming is the port, try some higher port, and the results will probably make it up every time.
That's an interesting point. I'll bring that up to the Link Live team because I'm not aware of anything magical about what we've chosen. And so having sort of a fallback option that says,
Yeah,
hey, that didn't go through, but like a great example would be, hey, I was running my connectivity tests, everything else seemed to go through okay, right? So boy, it seems like this is live right over here.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be nice. I mean, it's not
Interesting.
On the same topic, is there a way to ask for an adjustable a number of tests that can be stored up? I don't know what the limit is today, but it's relatively small.
10.
10 or something like that. Yeah, the tests that stay on the unit if you don't have cloud connectivity. I'd like to see that number massive.
I would agree. I wouldn't say massive. I would just
Well, I mean, if it was 100, how much memory can that really take on the unit, right?
I can look at that. Okay. I think part of it is we've always tried to be a little bit conservative, particularly because of session files and how long you're going to go, about how we leverage that memory space. But that doesn't mean that we couldn't look at extending it, particularly given that you would know that how long you're going, and you would potentially therefore be understanding if other things had to go.
Yep.
So yeah, I think that's something we can entertain. That's the end of my slide material. I know there were still some Link Live questions and other AirCheck questions, so I'll entertain questions pretty much until we hit our end of our hour.
Yeah, I'm going to ask a quick question is, do you have any plans for these suckers? Like, what are we doing with those ports?
Well, you can transfer your images.
Yeah.
So you get
Yeah.
pictures off of it.
But there's two of them, and you know.
That way you can send
I
pictures to
mean,
two people.
we talked about the Mac thing earlier, right? Like, the main thing is being able to load certificates. You know, requires me to go get a Windows machine. So we've kind of done that. But I'm curious if there's anything else you guys have in the pipeline for, you know, external connectivity or integration.
We have things we're thinking about.
I mean, the basic one that I would really like to see, which seems stupid, and I think even John kind of laughed at me. when I
Keyboard?
asked for it,
Keyboard?
Was the keyboard. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Was
that's
the keyboard to be able to type in
keyboard.
profile information.
kidding.
Like if you're typing your SSIDs, your pre-shared keys and stuff, because then I don't need to worry about the fact that I don't have a Mac client. Or, yeah, I mean, the keyboard was the big
Or like being able to grab a certificate off of a USB
thumb drive.
Yeah.
That one in particular, that's not the first time I've heard that one.
I can't imagine why. Mac.
I have another question for you on the profiles.
what we
If
send
you set
you.
something like, when I'm going to do measure wall thicknesses for RF attenuation,
Okay.
I have a target BSSID, little AP that's being run,
Okay.
and I want to filter to have it only scan that. To get it to scan quicker, I turn under profiles all channels off, but 149, whatever it's on,
You can.
and set the
Yep.
SSID. Is that also saved in the profile? All of the 8 to 11 settings.
Yeah.
So I don't want to associate. I'm not going to do any of those things. Just turning all the radios off.
Yeah, so you could use your SSID filtering to just find your one and only. Here's my one SSID that I care about. Yeah, you could use that.
And it's
So you
much
could-
faster at updating when it doesn't have to do multiple channels.
There you go. So you could just call that, wall thickness. And whenever you want to do that, I'm going to load my wall thickness profile.
I will follow your lead and I will make a profile now, rather than doing it every single time.
So I've had a couple of fans of the G1 with the replaceable battery comment that battery life, especially when the unit is powered off and idle and sort of sitting on my shelf waiting for my emergency, seemed to last a whole lot longer than the G2. And so sitting idle, ready state, not on charger. Can you talk about, is that expected behavior that the G2 sort of drains its battery over a period of time and the G1 didn't? Or are we maybe looking at defective units, or can you give us any guidance on that front at all?
Well, I know that in general for online usage, I know not your question, but online usage, I know that because of 11AC radios versus 11N, we certainly have a more power-hungry unit. This is the first I've heard that there's a little bit more of a leakage current, draw on the unit, but I'm not necessarily terribly surprised. I think we probably got some side benefits from an external battery pack that forced us to have some protection in place, because once you have external connectors that people can do silly things with, you need some stuff kind of in line there to prevent that. So we probably got some side benefits that from that. But
How long are they leaving it last?
I can second that. I've had G2s go 6-8 months, and you fire them up, and they're still full battery.
Well, mine doesn't go
G2s,
that,
if
like
you
that
got
long.
to.
Your G1.
Your G1.
Yeah, the G1 will last.
You said G2, so
Yeah, sorry.
your G1 goes.
So G1, if you forget about it, you come back 6 months later, you still have full battery.
I mean, if I'm not doing something that requires the G2 and if it's just in between classes, those are a month apart, and it's barely any hit, and I usually don't even charge it before going to class, and I have it. So I'm kind of the opposite. I'm not really seeing. That's what I'm trying to figure out if it's like a week, or is it?
If mine sits in my bag for 2 weeks and then I crack it open, I'm a little concerned about not having the power adapter nearby if I'm going to use it for more than an hour.
And it was a particularly compounding problem because you couldn't just field swap a new battery in.
right.
Could you only power it through the adapter, or can you power it through USB also?
It only powers through the adapter.
But luckily, thank you. You used a power adapter that you can get anywhere.
Anywhere.
Pretty common.
No. But a USB to AC adapter might be.
So I have a question on the power. If it fills, if you fill your battery, will it stop charging, or will it just continue to run current through it?
It's a good question. I don't know the answer.
Because I'm thinking like a charging base where, again, I just come home, I'll just pop it right on the thing. But if it's always running, I don't want to
Well, and if that's
constantly charging.
Yeah, if that's the advice, I mean, that's fine. If the advice is, hey, leave your AC adapter on the shelf with the unit and just leave it plugged in all the time, I just don't want to end up in a situation where, like, it's plugged in for 6 months and
And now the unit's unhappy.
now the batteries are bad, yeah.
Hey, Chris,
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about the external antenna? I've known a couple of people that seem to have confusion about what it's for and what it's not for.
Sure. The primary use that I would say the external antenna for is locating something. Because you're taking the MIMO antenna that's inside, and now as soon as you say I'm going to use external, you're going to one by one. You're plugging that little flag in, and the only antenna we sell is the flag, which is highly directional. So I always call it's awesome for the lazy man who wants to locate something, because you go, all right, that way. Instead of having to try and make squares and collect multiple readings and walk around a whole bunch. I do occasionally see people that think they're getting some sort of odd benefit, so it's not
Like a gain benefit or something?
Yeah, which that's not really what it's intended for, and it's not really going to help you with that. And particularly with the directionality, you're now getting oddball results, because now, sure, I'm looking at results, but it's for whichever way. So unless I'm doing this, plus I now have a scan pattern, so am I trying to, that's just a very weird use case. Not that I don't hear it, but that's really not what it's intended for. Primary intent for that thing is finding a device. And that makes finding a device really quick and simple comparative to not having it.
Just continuing on the battery thing, there's been a few other people that have checked in, have reported same results with the G2, with the battery life being a little bit less than the G, and the G1 being better. So.
Okay.
I've got a question actually, and I spoke with Kendall about it last week, and was it him that you talked to? Okay, so I was the guy that was looking for the information elements for the Maru stuff.
Oh, yes.
He's the guy.
I'm the guy. And I was just curious. I just wanted to make sure that it was, being.
No, Kendall didn't lie to you. She did bring that to me. So that did make it to the dev
And
team.
you had a good laugh.
She's not. She's not actually a dead end for stuff. Kendall and I talk quite a lot. So honestly, pretty much anything you guys send to Twitter, Kendall, reaches out to me on pretty much all of it, unless it's like an easy question that she already knows the answer to because she got asked it like a month ago and she has already asked me that answer. Yeah, she and I chat about it. She says, "Hey, have you heard this request before? Hey, have you, what about this? I had this question come in."
Was it left out intentionally, or is there?
I mean, honestly, when we were kind of looking at all the different stuff to bring across into G2 comparative to G1, it wasn't super high on the list of things to make sure that we got done. So it's on the list. It just has been kind of prioritized lower than other things.
No, I appreciate. I mean, seriously, the almost instant feedback saying, "Hey, we're going to take a look at this." Was awesome. So I appreciate that. I mean, it made my job that day real quick because I had the G1 handy. And first we went to the G2, of course, right? And then we're like, well, it's got to be in here somewhere. They didn't, take it out, and it wasn't there. But the G1 came through, so.
Yeah, we were actually able to track down the actual user story pretty quickly in our system. So yeah, there is a user story logged against it.